So when you start in this journey of self-improvement, and let's say you're overcoming certain vices that you had before, if you're overcoming certain toxic relationship patterns, or if you're overcoming childhood trauma, there is this identity shift that takes place. Now, identity shift is basically you shifting from the old identity that you had probably believed in for a long period of time. You shedding off those old belief systems, reprogramming new belief systems into your subconscious mind, and embodying this new identity. Now, this is essentially called identity shift because when you overcome your childhood trauma, when you raise your vibrational frequency, when you are aligning yourself to this new higher vibrational frequency, and you essentially become a whole new person. And when you become this whole new person, your identity starts to shift. And when your identity starts to shift, your environment also starts to shift. It's like you don't relate with the people that you used to relate before. You don't really, connect with the people that you connected with before. And it's like an identity shift. And this time you have identity crisis because your old reality is kind of merging with this new identity that you have created. And now both are fighting for each other in the limelight or in the dominant spotlight. And now you have the power to either go back to your old self or embrace change, step into the unknown, and embrace this new self that you have. Now, that is essentially, it's your choice in the end. Now, this is most common, especially when you're overcoming childhood trauma. Now, many people, they have toxic relationships. They overcome the toxic relationship, and now they have identity crisis. Now they're in this place where they have the ability to either accept this new relationship that is pretty healthy, that's normal, or go back into the same toxic pattern. Now it's very hard because the toxicity is very familiar. That is all they know for their entire life. And this new environment feels weird, it feels different, and it feels scary because from change comes the fear of missing out the whole pattern, the fear of missing something that you had known for a long period of time, the fear of missing something that is familiar. And you are stepping into this unknown waters and you feel so much fear, you feel so much anxiety, like what the hell is going on? That's when you realize that you have the ability to hold on to this new identity that you created, or it is very easy to slip back into this old identity, this old pattern, this old toxic relationship that you've been going on, on about for a long period of time. So that is basically your choice in the end. Now, the way you overcome this identity crisis is by letting go of the fear that is attached to this identity crisis that you are facing in the first place. And mostly is the fear of change. As I mentioned before, it's like you have to let go of this fear of change that you have because life is not very stagnant. It's not very constant. There's always going to be ups. There's always going to be downs. It's the key fact is to embrace it, embrace change. It's because only when you embrace the change, you have this ability to overcome all this past patterns, all this past behaviors that you have been programmed into and embrace your new self. And that essentially is overcoming identity crisis. And in a way, you have to also forgive your past self because most of us are so angry about ourselves because the way we acted in the past, the things that we did in the past, and we keep punishing ourselves. We keep saying these same stories, the same toxic things to our own self. It's like we make a mistake and we connect it to that tragic event that happened in third grade, to that embarrassing moment that happened when you were in sixth grade, fifth grade. Like you are connecting the dots and making your impression even bigger than it actually is. You're making your anxiety grow bigger and bigger because you are connecting your anxiety, that sadness that you're feeling at this given moment to multiple stories that happened in the past, and you are blowing it out of proportion and you are creating your own story, and now this compounds for a long period of time and then it's going to burst out. And instead of doing all that, it's like embrace this change, let go of the fear that is being attached to those past self, let go of your past self. And it's okay to lose some friends, to lose certain relationships because you are in the state of change. And when you change to this whole new person, Your life essentially becomes much more simple because when you are vibrating in this higher vibrational state, life becomes more easier. It's more of the feeling, less of the thinking. I made an entire video about that. I'll link it down in the description below and the pop-up card about. So basically, in that video, I explain like higher vibrational state is more about the feeling and less about the thinking. So when you transition to this higher vibrational state, life becomes so much more easier. You're thinking less, feeling more, and you are over that identity crisis that you had. Now, even when you have overcome, your past self, you've forgotten about it, and you overcome all your vices, you overcome your childhood trauma, there will still be moments where you feel that old self creep up back in. And these are moments when you feel pain, when you feel sadness, when you feel emotions of intense anger. You kind of feel like you're slipping back into that old addictive patterns. You're slipping back into that old version of yourself. And that time, it's like not to try to force yourself to not slip back into that old pattern. It's not preventing yourself, not fighting that resistance, but instead, embracing. Allow yourself to slip back, because only then you'll experience it, embrace it, and you have the ability to let it go. And once you let go of that, eventually your baseline vibration will be constant and you won't fully slip back into that same pattern, over and over and over again. And it'll be so much more less as compared to now. Now it'll be like every time you feel sadness, every time you feel pain, you kind of connected to that toxic relationship that you had. You kind of connected to that toxic stepmother that you had. Now, when you overcome all of that, when you start working with this, every time you feel getting connected to all these toxic behaviors, you embrace it. Don't fight the resistance, but feel the resistance and let go of the emotion attached to the resistance. It'll be so much more easier to not slip back into that old pattern over and over again every time you feel sad. And that is basically how to deal with identity crisis while you are shifting from your old state to this new state. Also create permanence in this new vibrational state or this new version of yourself that you have worked so hard to cement it into reality. So hope you like this one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.